Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, sir, guest speaker, the Capon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I want to convey my respect and salute to Ralph Opara, one of the founding fathers of the NAS, for remaining consistent and committed to the ideals collectively adopted 70 years ago in a university campus. Why? He was consistent for life, and he worked for the ideals. I imagine that this is the reason why he's being honored with memorial lectures. The last one was about 2 months ago. In December, here we are again. Having said that, I want to make a confession. I am honored to be invited. It's okay. Thank you. I have never really known much about the NAS. But from the information contained in the letter of invitation, the letterhead, I saw bullet points, summaries of the aims, the objects and philosophy of the organization. NAS is against archaism, moribund ideas and conventions. NAS is against tribalism. Not only did they specify what they are against, they also talked about what they are for humanism, comradeship, and chivalry. Now, these are ideals beyond that also extend to all beyond, before self. All before self. Sense before slogan. Truth before cant. Learn before leap. Change over status. Act over yapping. I must say these are quite noble. And I think you deserve a round of applause for yourself. And I just say too that you share these ideals with the revolutionary movement in Nigeria. And so we have to wonder, how come before now there hasn't been much collaboration? However, when I hear sheep ahoy, you know, I have a phobia because all I remember are slave ships. That terrible experience, the most inhuman experience any race has ever faced. We think about sailors as outlaws. This one-eyed, one-legged. Well, that's on the better side. Please accept my congratulations. And I wish to say that I'm glad to be here. Now, if His Eminence, Archbishop Onayekan, would accept to speak on the platform of NAS, who am I? It gave me the opportunity to think about confraternities. And I've come to appreciate that In the final analysis, we are talking about brotherhood. Formed around ideals. Although there's something sisterhood. Why do we limit it to brotherhood? Firstly, that confraternities are not for securing unearned and undeserved privileges through membership. My brother, no matter what. No. Or unending vengeance and retaliation and debauchery. I mean, looking at these ideals that I just drew your attention to. So from the two topics, in December, State of the Nation, in February, Tertiary Education and National Development. We have been called upon to look at historical issues and misconceptions in that theme. Well, the guest speaker talked about the major challenges: poor funding, recruitment policies, proliferations, inferiority complex, and so on and so forth. I would just wish to say that the university mirrors the society. So all the ills that are present in the society also manifest within the university sector, subsector. And the answer to that is that we cannot change the situation without changing the system. Now, one of the misconceptions that I find necessary to draw attention to is that reinforces the so-called white man's burden of civilizing the dark races. It's generally believed, and so one will assume that the first universities in the world were in Europe. But that is not the case. It's a university in Fez, Morocco, that was set up by a woman using her inheritance as far back as 859 AD. That's way before the Europeans got any ascendancy. Of course, everybody knows about the University of Timbuktu, 982 AD. Egypt, 972. In the West African sub-region, of course, this is closer to after our contact with the white man, Furabe, 1829, Liberia, 1839, of course, University of Ghana, 1948, UI, 1948. But the point we are seeking to make, gentlemen, is that about 2,500 years ago, on this very soil that we have planted our feet today, when we had the opportunity to compare our experience before our contact with the white man and after, our people affirmed that before the white man, we had started to wear clothes. Ebo Mari, Mamaru Ibogede. Before the white man, we were not covering ourselves with leaves. So the whole idea of scholarship, contention or contending ideas, the continuous pursuit of knowledge, refining of knowledge, reviewing it, which defines the concept of university, It's not alien to the African. I just thought that that point should be acknowledged so that that misconception of, oh, they came to civilize us and so they brought education and all of that. Actually, what they brought is miseducation. We shall return to this. Now, we know what our colonial experience was like. The educational system essentially was geared towards raising manpower for colonial administration. Teachers training institutes to man missionary schools. The legacy of Obafemi Awolowo, Chief Action Group and UPN, well, commendable, but there's something to be said about the content. The second point I wish to draw attention to as far as misconception is concerned, which actually I call it a misconception because I disagree with it. And the lead speaker addressed that. Is that the way forward is through centralization. Taking away all local initiatives. That is why we talk about the Vice Chancellor having to wait endlessly and be summoned by text message, only to be told to go back and come again. This simply mirrors the deformed nature of federalism and the slide to fascism in our country. Yes, we are witnessing what we call the iron fist. I was in the Faculty of Law here. I was the Secretary of the Academic Staff Union. There was a time we were told that we were teaching what we are not supposed to teach in a university environment. A soldier can dictate to us and tell us what we are supposed to teach and suffer loss of our jobs because we refuse to accept that. Of course, it totally negated the whole essence of academic freedom. Remember the Uniloring 49? You see, when governments and institutions, the law has set some minimum standards. The slide to fascism is when even those minimum standards they don't want to uphold. That's why I call to give another and say, you are not bound. Minister for Labor sees the whole Asso agitation as a personal affront. We can't really deal with this concept, this topic, this thing, without looking at the content of education. What is the purpose? Why did we set up universities? What are they teaching? We know historically that the very first universities in Europe and all of that, they were set up by religious organizations to propagate religion and dogma. In fact, in that period we were talking about heresy for those who disagreed. Because only later they added medicine and then law. So our concern is that our universities in Nigeria today must, well, first and foremost, the content of education as a general principle reflects the times. We'll come back to that. The second concern on my part is that of privatization. There are those who believe that the way forward is to privatize our universities, our tertiary institutions. They are already doing that with medical facilities. And so that rate of approving private universities. But the challenge of the topic is for us to relate this to the imperative of socioeconomic development in Nigeria. How can we hand over the socioeconomic development of Nigeria to private universities in a manner that will uplift the vast majority of Nigerians from poverty? How many miles or kilometers of tarred roads do we have in Nigeria? How many hospitals? What is the unemployment level? What is the life expectancy? What is the level of homelessness? How many of our people are barely clad in clothes and clothing? Of course, we all know that Nigeria is the poverty capital of the entire world right now. So our submission is that the primary task of tertiary institutions remains how to solve these problems, how to generate ideas. And this is the whole idea of town and gown. So the universities do not exist just as ideal places. If we do not relate what is being taught in the universities to meeting the problems that are peculiar to us in a country like Nigeria. The guest speaker had mentioned that we remain an economic appendage of those who were once colonial exploiters in a system of imperialism. So the challenge for the best of our academics is to generate ideas as to what's the way out. It doesn't make sense. We are flaring gas. We are continuing to burn off our gas because the imperialists say they don't need that gas. It's associated gas. It's only the oil that I need. They're destroying our environment through that process. At the same time, the Nigerian people cannot afford bottled gas, which remains imported. Does that make sense? You take our crude oil in its crude form, just the way it was when we were exporting cocoa and rubber and cotton and importing chocolate and bicycle tires and clothing. That pattern has remained. We export crude only to import kerosene. By the way, a liter of kerosene has been selling for almost 900 naira. What the poorest use. It's just now that they are raising the price, and diesel too. It's just now that they are raising the price of petrol to that same level. Does that make sense? To deliberately leave our refineries in unworkable conditions to pave way for the import of derivatives from what we are said to have in abundance. As an institution or as an institution, what is the position of the academia on this? If we want to look at the conditions of living of the average Nigerian, it takes up what our people were facing in North America that motivated people like Booker T. Washington to articulate what they consider to be the kind of education that will not only train the minds of the victims of oppression, train their hands, train their minds, and train their hearts. I don't know how much pride we take even in our products. How many of our graduates have learned to work with their hands? Question of content. So while Booker T. Washington said, "Up from slavery," the slogan for us should be, "Rise against imperialism and their stooges in Nigeria." What did I say? The slogan of the movement should be, "Rise against imperialism and their stooges in Nigeria." Somebody told them there are benefits from introducing a cashless economy. So they tricked all of us to hand our little pennies to them by their deadline. Oh boy, where's my money now? Stories. I don't know how many banks you drove past when they're coming here. Solutions. Well, I just wish to draw attention to the African Charter on Popular Participation in Governance. The kinds of things that Prof has talked about, which I have said mirrors the entire society, is possible because there is no popular participation in the management of public affairs. So people rush on, they create business opportunities for themselves and their friends. In the process of management of public affairs, the African Charter on Popular Participation in Governance is a continental charter that reserves for the Academic Staff Union a role. These are people who deal with ideas on a continuing basis. They study systems comparatively and historically. They know what has worked and what has not worked in different places. That's their passion, that's all they do. How can you be formulating a budget for the country without the input of Asso? Not to talk about even educational policy. If they are not consulting Asso, you know they are not consulting NUT. And we say we are in a democracy. How can we formulate a policy for the medical sector and the NMA is not involved? How do we challenge current? Our people are still beasts of burden, carrying the seedlings several kilometers to get to the farm. They trek there every day, back and forth. Even when they have their produce, they carry it on their head with the exposure to perishable ones and all of that. How do we multiply the number of tarred roads in our country without relying on the Lebanese and the Syrians and the Israelis? Every year we are turning out master's degree holders in civil engineering. Current, this is your challenge. What are you going to do about it? We need to build more schools, we need to build more hospitals. What's the most effective way of getting this thing done? But for those whose commitments are to the contract system, of course they would think like that. So as we mentioned earlier, over 2,500 years ago on this very land of ours, we're talking about the Edo experience and the Africa of old. We had the constitutional maxim. Irayi owu ropa no logo error. Meaning, there is no problem when subjected to collective reasoning and assessment that we cannot find solutions to. They want to boast that they are fathers of democracy. But we are talking about popular participation in the management of public affairs. And everybody in Edo at that time knew that an individual cannot claim to have perfect knowledge, sufficiently so to solve collective problems. These are embedded in sayings that speak to the relationship between one and all. Graphically, they say, look, when we all lie down, we don't all put our head in one direction. That's how our people conceptualize the issue of diversity of opinion. In other words, we are all entitled to our opinion. Let these ideas contend, and at the end of the day, the best ideas is what the collective will adopt. So diversity of opinion is a natural phenomenon, and in fact, it's welcome. Talk well, need talk well. Speak your own, and I will speak my own. With what did Fela say? So it's not only BENIN, it's an African experience. It's the product of our contact with the white man that privatized the whole thing, and they call it democracy. So we are talking about the university as an environment where the spirit of inquiry reigns supreme, and there is commitment to pursuit of knowledge, review, reassessment, and enhancement of existing knowledge, and fresh insights being generated on a continuing basis. As the guest speaker has said, where there are no access to books, documents of historical experiences, and journals, contemporary reflections, and there is a lack of capacity to even contribute to the discourse. How can we be surprised that the ranking of Nigerian universities, even in Africa, so distinguished ladies and gentlemen, these issues are political. The way forward rests in the mobilization of the mass of the victims. We have the knowledge, we can break it down to the understanding of our people. And as a matter of fact, we have a lot and enough from our history to refresh the memories of the present generation. So at the end of the day, we will have universities that solve the problems of our society. Thank you very much.